Welcome to Black Philanthropy Speaks, where we speak everything Black philanthropy. I am so excited to have you here today. I'm going to get started. My name is Dr. Brandy Jackson, and I am just very excited that you have joined my YouTube page. This is going to be a great opportunity for you to learn more about philanthropy and also to just learn about Black fundraisers who are actually within the field, who are making a difference. And just again, more, I thought the best way to kick off this opportunity to learn everything Black philanthropy would be to hear more about my dissertation. My dissertation focus on philanthropy, Black philanthropists, or excuse me, Black fundraisers at HBCUs, private HBCUs. So as you see from the title, Empowered Pathways, Learning from the Journey of Black Development Fundraisers. So my motivation for this is I am a graduate of two HBCUs. My first HBCU, a small private institution in Nashville, Tennessee, Fisk University. And I did not have enough money to go back after my freshman year. But it was because of a philanthropist, Vivian Riggins, in Akron, Ohio, I was able to finish. I was able to finish Fisk University and graduate in 2006. This has been so powerful to my life because it made me write this dissertation. It made me want to realize who are the individuals who are actually engaging with philanthropists, who are engaging with donors, and those are development officers. And so I went and even further thought about, well, what are the experiences of Black development officers or development officers at private HBCUs compared to public HBCUs? And so this was the reason for this study. When we take a look at the research in publications, in research, you will see that there are 101 HBCUs, 49 are private HBCUs. And so this was this is giving you the background of the study. You will note as well in research for private HBCUs, they rely heavily on tuition and fees from their students. So most times private institutions, and especially small private institutions, can be very reliant on tuition and fees from their students, dependent on their students. So, private HBCUs compared to public HBCUs, they have a greater financial struggle due to the lack of state funding that public institutions are able to receive. And so that's something to keep in mind. When I was writing this dissertation, my chair would say, remember, what is the gap in the research? And so one of the key gaps that I saw is that there was not enough research on private HBCUs and how they fundraise. And so we see here for Tyndall, as she indicates, there is a need for both qualitative and quantitative studies to describe the roles that constitute the duties and experience of fundraisers at historically Black colleges. And so as we take a look at the literature review there was so much research I was able to put together to really kind of give a huge basis, framework, if you want to say, for what we can learn about HBCUs and fundraising. And so for Milner, what he notes is that in education, research on African American voices are rarely heard, which gives more privilege to white voices, beliefs, ideologies, views, compared to individuals who are people of color. And so that is the reason why we're not hearing about Black development officers, because more privilege is really kind of geared to predominantly white institutions and their experiences. And so this was the reason why I wanted to put forth Black voices, Black individuals who are in fundraising. When we take again a look at the research, African Americans and people of color are underrepresented in higher education and particularly in institutional advancement offices. That's very important to note. What we do know and what we hear a whole lot is about HBCU challenges. They're building how they have a lack of building their endowments, growing their annual funds, and securing major financial gifts, which this is important, but it's also important to hear as well how leaders are able, what other challenges that they're having, how they're able to get the money in, not just the direct issues of annual giving, but what are some other obstacles that prevent getting those major gifts? So I think it's very important to note that we need to know who does the asking in higher education. And so I love Cook. She has done a great job in her 1997 and even others publications to indicate that the president is initially the football coach. He has a group of offensive linemen, board members, alumni volunteers who are also active leaders in fundraising. And so 70% of the job of a fundraiser, of a president, should be devoted to fundraising. When we take a look at how private HBCUs, HBCs in general, as they've over the years, especially during the civil rights era, HBCU presidents were monumental in shaping Black colleges and the racial policies and practices of the South. So, as well as building these institutions, fundraising, speaking to all these different individuals, they also had to be very impactful of building racial policies and practices during that time. That's a lot to be doing, and so again, it's no different from what a president is doing today. But you kind of get what I'm saying. You know, when we take a look at, not only are there presidents who are doing the fundraising, there are also even now more individuals such as development officers who are raising funds as well. And so those are considering the running back individuals. We have about 101, nearly 200,000 individuals who are dedicated being in an institutional advancement office. However, when we look at the demographics of individuals who are in institutional advancement offices, 90% are white. And so individuals, people of color, make under 10% within the field. And so Bowman in 2010 writes about how there is a need for more diverse development officers to be in higher education institutions, to work, to really help fundraise as well. And so the conceptual framework and paradigm that I used within this study was the resource dependency theory by Pfeiffer and Slacek. So RDT, which really gives a great evaluation on how organizations structures, how their structures and what they're depending on, what they're actually depending on. So you can think of maybe state institutions, and state institutions rely on federal funding. And so many state institutions have many different mechanisms and stakeholders as dependencies. And so, the key component is to really not be so dependent on just state funding. When you think about private HBCUs, they're dependent on their donors. But what are ways that private HBCUs and private institutions in general are generating funding and not just relying on one source of funding? The other paradigm, I use a framework and now paradigm to really help elevate Black development officers. And so that was to be able to use the critical race theory, to be able to uplift the voices and be able to really, again, uplift, uplift their voices, in which, again, as I kind of gave you background, where we don't hear Black development officers' voices as much in their experiences. So there were 4 questions that helped this study really, really shape the study. And so the first question was, what strategies are used by Black development officers at private HBCUs to obtain external financial resources? Number 2, how do Black development officers at private HBCUs target university stakeholders such as board members, alumni donors, and philanthropic foundations to generate internal financial resources? Number 3, what role does race play in fundraising? And number 4, what factors serve as challenges and aid in the success in fundraising at private HBCUs? So the methodology used within the study was a phenomenological approach. And the goal was, specifically out of all the different methodologies that I could have used to employ within the study, I wanted to use phenomenological study because I thought it was very important to see the phenomenon, a continual phenomenon, in essence, of what was constantly being recognized throughout all the questions. And so I used a transcendental phenomenological approach. The goal was not to interpret, less on interpretation, and just to really pick up the description of what the experience of the participants. And so I did that by journaling, to bracket my thoughts and to block out bias as well. So the target population and sample, again, the recruitment was for the 49 private HBCUs. And so the goal was to have 7 to 12 participants within the study. They had to fit the criteria of 1 year, at least 1 year at the private HBCU, 1 year in fundraising. And it was very broad because being so specific, I really had to be broad. But I wanted to make sure that the individual also was collecting fundraising. So collecting gifts from alumni, from donors from the institution. So the final sample came down to 10 participants from 7 private HBCUs. So there were several emails, several calls, several networkings. Oh, just a lot of networking to get these invitations to individuals. In the end, 10 accepted the invitation from 7 private HBCUs. So there were 10 participants from 7 private HBCUs. And again, I wanted to do this as much until data saturation, until I could get all my questions answered. I wanted to make sure I could get all my questions answered. And so after my IRB was approved successfully in the fall, October 28th, it was such a great day. I then was able to start. I started like last November to send out my demographic survey, my study consent forms, as well as my semi-structured questions to really give a great overview of what people knew what they were getting themselves into, just the commitment, really. And I wanted to make sure people knew at any time you can, if you don't want to proceed, you can do that. And so I didn't really have a lot of issue. I think it was really trying to get the commitment and to ensure that everything was also going to be confidential. And so, I think really reassuring that, because you can send information, but again, reassuring that then people started to commit. So that was really great. And also just letting them know that it was going to be audio recorded. All of this would be safely stored. And so, and that I would be journaling as well. So after getting all of the data from all of the participants, again, 10 participants from private ins- seven private HBCUs, a majority of the participants were female. Um, 70% of them had heavy philanthropy experience, lots of years of experience. Many of them had 11 years or more in higher education, and particularly all of them identified as African American or Black. Um, all of them had at least 2 degrees and or a fundraising certificate. And as you see here, these were the key titles that all of the participants really range from. I'm not putting them all there, but just that you see there. Um, in addition, their yearly annual goals range from 1 million each year. And I'm saying all the gifts that they received for the year came into 1 million. This is just an average to 65 million a year. 65 million a year. And so I had many themes that were identified throughout uh, throughout this study. I'm only going to identify 4 that we're going to talk about today. Number 1 was strategic planning, and we'll talk about the sub strategies as well. Targeted approach. Um, race race matters was a key component, and then challenges that fundraisers dealt with as well. So the number 1 question starting out was, what were some key strategies used? So using the strategic plan was a key component for most of all of the fundraisers. And so we see here for Virginia, she talks about, we then review the strategic plan, our mission and vision. They do a 2-day retreat, and this is where we look at our results from the year. We ensure that the various campaigns are assigned correctly, and we do all the strategic planning and our retreat prior to the start of the academic year. And so, Virginia, she was in the office that had about 1 year, 2 million each year that she received of gifts for her office. So if their academic year started July 1, June 30th was the key year or key time period that they received 2 million gifts each year. And so primarily before just going forth and asking for donations, having a strategic plan was really key and a key component. And when we see with even in research that that's very important, that's key to really starting, really helping a university solely. One of the fundraisers who has about 65 to 70 million that comes in each year, they solely start from their strategic plan. And so that was a key component used for strategies. Sub strategies that were used that was very important. Razor's Edge. Razor's Edge is a customer management CRM CRM system used that many of all of the fundraising institutional advancement offices used to really help with putting in key data for their donors. And there were several other CRMs that they used as well as face-to-face presentations with donors, with alumni. And that seemed like a door opener, meeting with a donor, whether it even be through Zoom or meeting up for coffee. It was very important to having those face-to-face meetings. Online communication. And we see here for Charlie. Charlie was the director of annual giving. And again, she was an institution or worked at an institution that received large amount of funding at the end of their year. But she makes it very clear we have to solicit en masse, right? I don't have time to focus on a few people, if you will, or like a few high dollar donors. I'm working to figure out what the mass appeal would be. And so that's very important, having a key online communication presence. Gassman and Bowman talk about for private HBCUs and HBCUs in general compared to predominantly white institutions. Sometimes there's a vast difference in which predominantly white institutions may have, and I'm just giving real facts. Uh, Penn State, they have about 600 folks for major gifts. 600. Whereas some institutions that I spoke with maybe have a team of 5, maybe have a team of 6, maybe have a team of 40. And so you can see the vast difference in where if you're not having all these individuals, you're missing people. You're not able to, really hit everyone, target everyone. Another component was bringing prospective donors to campus. That was a game changer and a key strategy. After sending online communications, meeting with them, documenting information in Razor's Edge, it was very important as well to bring the donor to campus because that was a game changer as well. Team structure was key as well, as I kind of even alluded before. So we see here for one of the fundraisers where he indicated, I do the heavy lifting of fundraising. It's all on me. I think that this is the structure for quite a few HBCUs, especially your smaller HBCUs. We do the job of about 5 to 6 people. And so, in research, that's considered like the liaison, the practitioner that's really the go-to person that everyone is really relying on and that gets things done. And so, again, as this individual has indicated of how they do 5 to 6 jobs, Gassman and Bowman, as I talked about, private and public HBCUs, their funding budgets are smaller than the resource institution advancement funding budgets of predominantly white institutions, which gives a lack of opportunity to efficiently communicate with alumni and friends of the institution. So, that's something to really kind of think about when individuals thinking like these institutions are not really getting these funding, and I know why, but do you really know why? You have to be able to see in the structure, these team structures, this makes a difference. And we'll talk about just what can be done to kind of fix that. So how do Black development officers at private HBCUs target the stakeholders in which we talked about before? And so what I loved from hearing from all of these fundraisers, I heard keywords: segment, capacity, cultivate, identify, targeted messages. From all the participants, you just really heard all these keywords. And so even like for Charlie, she said, so again, my focus, Charlie was the annual fund director. She talked about her goal is online. And so she said, my focus is alumni, and my focus are those with the capacity anywhere from 1 to 25,000. So that's really important, to have an online job and to be really ensuring, how can I target Brandy Jackson? Does she have the capacity to give at least 25,000, maybe even 5,000? For Dawn, she said her key strategy, what their office is moving towards, is using top 10, focus 50, and then looking at the suspect 70. So all of these offices have key components, key really strategies that they use in order to bring in the dollars and to really build relationships. And so that's what I shared more as well in my dissertation as well. And so one of the key things that I wanted to note is a sub theme was how stakeholders were used as door openers. Alumni were the key ones. Even for one of the other VPs of institution advancement, he talked about how board members were were key door openers. And when you look at resource dependency theory, it talks about how you must be, yeah, and I think in the future, I'm going to really kind of ensure how you're able to see how the research really pulls in. I really today wanted to just focus on the participants, but I'm really going to be in the future, so that's why you'll have to come back, is to really kind of show you the resource dependency theory and how it connects with all of this. But stakeholder, this, for example, for Lucille, she indicated that alumni was a door opener. So she said, I'm going to give you an example. We were trying to build a new building. Well, through some involvement with different people and some cultivation with part of the city, that's how we got the 10 million for this new center. But there was some alumni involvement in this project. You won't always see alumni listed in an article, but it's the behind the scenes. This is kind of like the relay race. The handoff occurred, and then you gave it to the next person to run the leg off the race. And so I think that that's very important. People do this or alumni will be involved when they feel good about their institution. And so we see here for research where it talks about there's a strong connection between giving and how alumni view their alma mater, the degree of satisfaction with their alumni experience and their level of engagement in alumni activities. So that's something to keep in mind. If individuals are not satisfied with their undergraduate experience, not only their undergraduate experience, but even their graduate experience, they're not going to want to be a part. They're not going to want to be a part of being a door opener. And so it's very important, even we as administrators that are in higher education, that we are giving a good experience for our students. And we are trying to reconcile with folks so that in the future, they will want to give back and they will be future door openers. It's just something to consider. I know for student life, it's kind of like it can be hard at times. But just thinking of the future is always something we have to keep in mind, that I keep in mind as well in my work. So what role does race play in fundraising for Black development officers at private HBCUs? And I want you to know I'm giving a very quick overview. There was so much information shared, but I'm just kind of giving a quick overview. But race mattered. Race matters. Race was a key component. Even I kind of felt, and I can say it now, I felt race mattered a lot, even if individuals didn't want to say that it did. And there were many people, and that's just my opinion. But there were individuals who felt like no, race plays no factor in how I fundraise. In fact, it really was race had some undertones in their effort, but wasn't a major component. Now, for some, they felt more racism at PWIs compared being at private HBCUs. And so one that I just really enjoyed hearing was there was one individual, she said there was an extra level of self-assurance when speaking with alumni or Black donors about donating to the institution. And so we see in Cause Effect 2019 research study where it showed how individuals, people of color, wanted to see individuals that look like them. So donors wanted to see individuals that look like them speaking to them about giving. And so it does play a factor. It is important. One issue that was very interesting in this study that came about was being at an HBCU and dealing with discrimination, but not racism. And so that was something that came up. One individual indicated, sometimes being talked to in a way or being even yelled at in a way. not being able to say that this is racism, but the comfortability of just talking to individuals. And we're in a Black institution. So I think that that was a very interesting barrier that this individual had to migrate through. Judy, I think she made it very clear. Again, I was an example of being at a predominantly white institution compared to being now at this institution. She said, I don't think race has a barrier, uh, has a bearing working at institution E. So working at PWIs, there was always this concern that people, well, was excuse me. Well, I wasn't sure whether I was being accepted by the donor or not. So being here, I don't feel that same way. I think it just gives me a different level of confidence. So being at this HBCU, she indicated it gave confidence, even though she was already confident. She said, being at the PWI, I always had to think about my race when I would sit in front of the donor, or I traveled a lot. I would go to people's houses, and sometimes there's a lot of discomfort from that. So I don't feel the same discomfort at institution E. So, what factors, in addition, serve as challenges in aiding success? So, one that I really heard a lot from many of fundraisers was infrastructure, limited resources and infrastructure. And so PG Dot said, well, we're just going to tell you right off the bat, the biggest challenge is not having the proper infrastructure. And so for her, it was, having so many gifts, having so many donations, and not having enough individuals to process all of these donations, which in turn delays, um, you know, research for the faculty, uh, delays research for the dean, and more importantly, delays a scholarship being posted. So that was something to really consider, that that's something that has to be really looked at. And again, I do have a source of what can be done. Number two, another challenge was the lack of culture of philanthropy. And I want to note this before that a lack of culture of philanthropy is not only an issue at HBCUs, but for many organizations and many universities, even at PWIs, everyone does not have a buy-in. That's essentially what having a culture of philanthropy mean, that everyone has a buy-in. Everyone believes in that we all play a role in philanthropy. We all play a role. We know that by me picking up this phone and answering the phone in a polite way, in a nasty way, that's going to hurt the institution. By me not immediately getting back with a student or delay in an email. And again, we don't have to be working 24/7, but everything that we do plays a role in building a culture of philanthropy. And so J Philanthropy indicated that he said, leadership has to commit that fundraising is a priority. There has to be a commitment on the part of the institution so that fundraising is pervasive. Faculty members must know that fundraising is important, and staff members must know that fundraising is important. So everyone must know that they play a part, and that not only is fundraising is something that they do, but this is what we're doing. What I do plays a role in building philanthropy and really bringing philanthropy to this institution. So what are some takeaways and recommendations? Number one, we should know that HBCUs are powerhouses. They are precious jewels in the United States. And so they have a powerful punch. They contribute $14.8 billion economic impact to communities and really provide jobs, for the community. And so we need to ensure that we are investing more and more. One of the key components that I think that if you are a donor and you're thinking about investing at an HBCU, yes, please, number one, please give a scholarship, but think about investing in the infrastructure. Think about for, as I talked about, for these fundraising institutional advancement offices, how can you ensure that for institution E, that they have all the development officers that they need, that they have all the prospect researchers that they have all the processors that they have all the stewardship individuals that they need in order to ensure that they're giving timeless presentations and just good stewardship overall. That's just very important. So that's one thing that you could consider. Speaking with the president or maybe the vice president of the institutional advancement to say, I would like to invest in this way. I would like to give a donation, scholarship, because we need our students to have scholarships, period. But in addition, you know, speaking with the president or speaking with the VP or speaking with the dean, of about how can I ensure that this area, your fundraising, is really being built to top notch. So that's one way to consider. I feel so good about that. Number two, I think there's a need for more people of color to enter the field. And one of the key components I saw in my study was that we saw millennials were going straight, made a shift deliberately into the field, deliberately into fundraising. And so that should be important. That should be a really component of really bringing more millennials into the field, and all individuals, but more importantly, people of color. We bring people of color, bring a different conversation, to every table. And so we have to do a better job of ensuring. So you can also hire me as well. I'm not going to talk about all of these components, but I wanted to note, for Black development officers, they're having to migrate in two different worlds. And, we'll kind of look at W.E.B. Du Bois double consciousness, being in a predominantly white society and also being at a Black institution. So having to navigate in those two different worlds. But there are different organizations that give great training. I feel that even private HBCUs and HBCUs, we've seen an uptick, as we saw in 2020, of our HBCUs being very strengthened in their institutional advancement offices. And so I feel that, number one, HBCU institutional advancement offices who've been very successful should be speaking up more to really kind of talk about their success and how they're able to really uphold this success and share with other organizations that have Black donors base of how they can be successful. But two organizations that are already doing that as well is United Negro College Fund and also HBCU Philanthropy Symposium. Awesome two organizations. They give culturally relevant fundraising practices, and they do that as well for HBCUs. I think as well for HBCU presidents and fundraising professionals, opportunities for fundraise to utilize entrepreneur opportunities for the longevity of private HBCUs. I think 2020 really made all of us think differently on how to get the coin. And so constantly that has to be a more key way. And also not looking at the traditional way of looking at donors from the past, always looking at new ways on how to appeal to new donors, and donors who are a good fit to the institution, because not every donor is a good fit for every institution. So that's also important. As noted, strategic planning must be key and must be a priority. And that just gives an outline, a Bible booklet, to really kind of, did you do what you said you were going to do? This is not always easy, but definitely it's very useful. Financial investment to institutional advancement offices. I started with that at the top. So again, at the bottom, yes, financial investment to institutional advancement offices is key. Building a culture of philanthropy, that just should be number one, because and it starts not only with senior leadership. No, it's everyone. So the administrative assistant, they have to know how they play a part. And so you also have to pay them, so they also feel so they feel the buy-in too. So you get what I'm saying. There's just so many components. Money helps everything. So yeah. So that is just a little bit of Black Philanthropy Speaks. I am so excited that you joined me today. I've been very inspired to do this YouTube from the lead attorney as well as Dodash and my new person that I'm listening to. Well, I'll give her highlights later, but I'm excited for myself. This was really kind of nerve-wracking. Like, when am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? But I'm glad I'm doing it. So come back, please subscribe, like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. And again, we're going to have future individuals, coming to the page to talk more about philanthropy. This is just the beginning, so I'm very excited that you came today. Thank you so much, and I hope you come back again. Bye.